Hello and welcome into the Grueling Truth. This is the Grueling Truth NASCAR show. I'm Joe Spilman, along with my good friend Steve Risley. And Steve, we are back. We are back to do another NASCAR show.
We're down to the final few, aren't we? Just
We are.
maybe two shows left before we take a little break here and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
gear up for
Well,
the Rumble in the Coliseum out here in my hometown of Los Angeles, which is the
yeah.
stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life, running a NASCAR race in a football stadium. And they
Hey,
paved the
I
whole stadium. I don't know
I
how they do
enjoyed.
that.
Yeah, I enjoyed it last year. They pave it and then they take it all out. But
Yeah, they
Steve, as,
do.
as you can see, I've lost my beard and I've lost all the hair on my head. And you may be wondering what's wrong with me. I'll let you know there's nothing wrong with me. I coach a youth
That's good
football
to
team,
know.
fifth and sixth graders, and I told them at the beginning of the championship what they wanted as a reward if they won the championship at the end of the season. And they told me that they wanted to shave my head and my beard off. And I didn't think they were that good, so I told them okay.
Joe, why didn't you offer lunch at Subway or something like
I
that,
don't know. I wish I
or
would have did.
or
Man,
banana splits at Dairy Queen or something other
yeah,
than oh
walking around all day running into people that know me and everybody's doing a double take,
hey
because they
dude
can't figure
at
out.
63 I value my quaff, okay,
Man,
so there's no way anybody's cutting this crap off my head.
well, I actually forgot because I've had a beard and hair on my head so long that
Yeah,
that I forget sometimes how much like Uncle Fester I look, and it's not a good look for me. I need to get this beard back. I didn't know my double
uh,
chin was that pronounced with
I'm
my
not
beard.
gonna say a word, okay, because
You,
if I shaved my head I would be ultimately uglier than you seem to think you are, but you're not.
oh
It
man,
all
well,
grows back.
thank you, Steve.
It comes back.
Well, we need to get into our show because we need to have a relatively quick one because in the next hour, Ryan Peters and I host a radio show in our town of Vivi at Froggy 95.9, and that will play out on the Grueling Truth at 9 o'clock. So one show right after
And
the other here.
I hope next week to be a guest on Talk IU
We,
basketball with you guys.
well, to let a little secret out of the bag, we have already announced you will be uh, our guest next week,
I will
and we
be
were
ready to go, and we will take a dive into the Hoosiers. But right now, let's take a dive into Martinsville,
let's do
and
that.
then
But
head into predictions of Phoenix.
Steve, we before we do all that, we got to keep our friends over at betting.net and my good pastor happy
Yes.
by letting everybody know that the grueling truth is powered by betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet to find an online casino or sports book that's right for you. So after you listen to me and Steve talk about NASCAR, something that we have no idea what we're talking about, according to some, if you like our advice, head on over to betting.net. It'll line you up with the right casino if you want to place a bet on this week's championship race.
Hey,
So,
Joe, let's look
uh,
at it this way before we get into it. We are more fortunate than Mike Goodpasture because his ass just got off a 20-hour bus
yeah, he
ride
did. Yeah,
on the way to Dallas to take his homeschooled football team down to play in Texas Stadium, in the AT&T Texas Stadium, and for a glorious game. But what a privilege it is to get to play in a
right.
stadium like that. And next week we'll give you the results of his game down there. But could you imagine? And your wife is sitting next to you for the entire 20
Oh, man.
hours on a
Oh,
bus.
oh. Well, me and my wife get along. I don't know my
I
good
love my
pastor.
wife. 38 years of marriage. Yeah.
I don't know my good pastor's marital relationship. I think he gets along relatively well with his wife, so maybe it's like a little mini vacation for him on a Greyhound bus. But yeah, I wish him luck, and I wish his kids luck. I think they play tomorrow or maybe Saturday. I don't really remember what day they're playing on.
I think they
But
play Saturday and they immediately get back on the bus and drive back.
man, and I'll tell you,
Ouch.
so last year, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, I went to AT&T Stadium. I made the drive down from VV, Cincinnati area here. Made the drive down to watch UC get absolutely obliterated in the first round of the college football playoffs, and that is an incredible field. down there. And I'll tell you one thing that every stadium in the country needs to do at AT&T Stadium in Arlington. It's not in Dallas, Steve. But one thing every stadium in the country needs to do, on the front of your seat, there's this little barcode, Q code or whatever. You scan that with your phone. It brings up an app. You can order whatever you want, and they walk it right to you. You don't even have to get up. It's amazing.
Gotta love Jerry Jones, baby.
Oh,
You
man,
gotta
it's
love
amazing.
Jerry Jones.
You know how
Let's
drunk
get him
people
to buy a NASCAR team. What do you think?
Let's
Jerry
get him
Jones
just
on the NASCAR team.
he should buy a NASCAR team and sponsor our show. Oh,
There
I'm
you
sorry.
go.
Getting a phone call in the middle of the show because I neglected to turn my sound off. But
There you go.
Steve, let's get into it. Martinsville.
All right.
Holy cow, Martinsville. I'm going to give you my.
Well, ho hum ding for 480 laps.
Yeah, let me give you my.
Pretty mundane for four, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
And then we'll get to the last 20 laps, which was holy cow.
That race was mundane for 480 laps. My synopsis of Martinsville was the same boring Martinsville that we had seen the previously in the season, which was incredibly boring. And something about the short flat tracks with this new car and being as durable as they are, that it's just leading to boring races at Martinsville and short flat tracks. I think that is the cause of it. Now you get to lap 480. They have a pit stop or whatever it was, right around 20 laps left to go. They have a pit stop. Our stays out to try to throw a Hail Mary of himself and say, maybe I could just stay out front, block, win this race, make it into the next round. And he was able to hold off everybody for he was able to hold off everybody for, a good 12 laps or so. And then all hell broke loose. We get down to the final lap, and Ross Chastain knows that he has to pick up two positions to make it into the championship round. Denny Hamlin had 2 points on him, and he decides to do something that you've only ever seen on a video game, except for the time Kyle Larson tried to do it at Darlington. He slams himself into the wall coming out of turn 4 and rides the wall with his foot on the pedal or foot on the gas the entire way around the track, picks up 6% positions, ended up finishing 4th, beating Denny Hamlin by 2 points and making it into the championship round. One of the most incredible things I have ever seen, Steve. What's your take on it?
All right. Before we get to that, can we talk a little bit about the whole process of Martinsville? And I got a few questions for you and get your input on.
Okay.
What do you think about the teamwork of Hendrick, where Larson gives up the number 1 pit stall to Elliott, and essentially lets Elliott pretty much blocks, because they start 1 and 2, and they have restarts of 1 and 2 pretty much a lot of the first 480 laps into it. And Larson is being a team player with almost Formula One like team orders. And I don't want to say there were team orders, but what's your take on Larson giving up the number 1 stall? I mean, is that kosher in NASCAR, or is that just the way we're going now in NASCAR since Larson was already out of the sport or out of the championship, and Elliott's their sole surviving chance really to get there?
Well, I think that obviously it is kosher in NASCAR because, well, they did it and they were allowed to do it. I don't think there's anything in the rules that says that they can do it. My personal perspective on this is I personally do not think it's something that NASCAR should allow. While there are teams in NASCAR, and I understand that they build engines together, they have team strategies together. NASCAR is an individual car and team sport, and when I mean by car and team is driver, car, pit crew, crew chief. That's a team, and I think really I kind of view teams in NASCAR like you would view the same different teams in the same conference in any other sport. Yeah, they're loosely affiliated. All the Chevrolets are loosely affiliated. All the Hendricks cars are affiliated. But at the end of the day, it's about that car and that team, the individual team. And I understand that, races, teammates do help block, they do help draft. That's all well and good. But giving up, essentially what NASCAR allowed was they let the two of the best drivers in NASCAR go out and compete for the same stall box. Every other team's not getting that same shot. So, you know, this comes down to basically, okay, you're out, but we get two shots at that first pit stall. And I don't think that should be allowed. And under any other circumstances, if Kyle Larson was still in the championship, he wouldn't have given it up. So I think Chase Elliott should have had to compete from the number 2 pit stall, and that's where he should have stayed because that's what he earned. But I know everybody has a different take on that and a different opinion. So let's hear what you think.
Well, I think it probably, in the end, it may have saved Chase Elliott to getting into the Final Four.
It may have. You're absolutely right.
Because, I mean, the pit stall he was able to work out of, and he was the 4th driver in the end. I mean, he was in by 4 points. And that was it. And of the top 4 drivers competing Sunday in Phoenix, the 9 car, and you know how I feel about the 9 car, but it probably saved him from getting in, because I'm not sure he would have made it had he started somewhere back in a different pit stall where he had to contend with a lot more traffic getting in and out of the stalls than he had to. So I think that may have set a little bit of a start of a precedent in NASCAR to see if teams are going to be more actively pursuing that now when you get down to the final 8 and the final 4, and you may see much more of a team setup. And I felt that Larson was doing some blocking for Elliott too. I thought Elliott was able to slide down inside real quick, pretty easily, thanks to Kyle, and was able to get his car down on the bottom groove and then command the lead, stay out front, and stay out of the mess. So yeah, I'm grateful that the 9 car is in the championship. But I would like to have seen if the 5 and 9 were both competing to get in to the Final Four, if those same circumstances would have arisen.
I don't think they would have.
I don't think they would have either.
Do you
not
think?
at all.
So I guess my question to you is: do you think this is something that NASCAR should allow?
Well, I don't know how you stop it. I mean, you kind of get into politics and almost like the Democrats and Republicans. One wants greater government regulation. One wants less government regulation. Like I said, I've always chosen, even with the Bubba Wallace thing, I'm old school and say let's have at it, boys, and do what you got to do to win a race. And these super teams now have set a pathway for kind of controlling the sport. Although I think you're seeing a turnaround a little bit. We'll talk about that a little bit too. Where we got to go is Trackhouse Racing, newer teams coming in, but are they playing team ball too? I think this sets a little bit of a precedent for next season. You're going to probably see a little bit more team ball being played now. Not until the playoffs start though, because it's a free for all until you get in the playoffs. Then once you're in, you go from there. So I don't know. I got mixed emotions about it. So in one hand, I'm grateful that the 9 car got in. On the other hand, I'm not sure I really like the way he got in, because I'm not sure he would have gotten in without that first pit stall and being able to control things.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I don't know moving forward, and I've already said this. I don't know moving forward that I like the idea that NASCAR will let teammates share, or basically give away their stalls or share stalls. So, you know, I guess right now it is what
Well,
it is. Chase Elliott is
technically,
in, and he lives to fight another day.
yeah, technically, he didn't give it away. I mean, just Kyle Larson chose a different stall,
Yeah, that's
and
true.
then the second pick went to. I mean,
But
if you want to rub it down as a true Chase Elliott
right,
fan, as I am, it's like Kyle chose a different stall, and that left the number one stall open. And well, at that point? What's Chase Elliott going to do? He's
right.
going to take the first stall. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, and I
there was
agree.
no giving it away
I agree. It's
technically, but we know what happened.
right. Yeah, I agree.
We know what happened.
So
So,
going
anyway,
back,
so the other point is then I don't know that I like these next gen cars on the short tracks. I just think that they're, you know, I I hate to say this, but I miss the days of rubbing fenders, banging each other up, cutting tires, losing a lap because you got to come in, trying to make your lap back up. These cars are so durable that they really don't create any havoc on these short tracks. And I think that's the moniker of the short tracks. What are your thoughts?
no, yeah, absolutely. That's kind of what I was alluding to when we opened the show. But on the other hand, because of the durability of these next gen cars that witnessed all season, we got to maybe see one of the greatest spectacles we might ever get to see on a racetrack with Ross Chastain this weekend. Because I don't think if he's in a Gen 6 car that happens. I don't think he makes it. I don't think he makes it back to the start finish line in the Gen 6 car. So I think it's take a little, give a little. I think on the mile and a halfs and super speedway type tracks this year, I think especially for the mile and a halfs with the next gen car, we saw some improved racing this year. And we've talked about this, I don't know, countless times on the show, this new car, and there's definitely a lot to work on. I know the drivers are very skeptical of the car. They think it's very dangerous. I think I have to agree with them after, we saw a career-ending injury this year. We saw two drivers go out for multiple weeks with concussions from wrecks that in previous years wouldn't even, they would have been hopping out and jumping into the ambulance, spending 10 minutes in the infield care center, and then doing their interview. So, there's a lot to work on there with the next gen car, but I think it has contributed to some better racing this year on certain tracks. And like I said, I don't think we see the spectacle that was Ross Chastain at the end of that race in the Gen 6 car.
No, I agree entirely, and I think they're going to work out the issues with the safety of the next gen car. They'll figure out a way to soften up the rear end so we don't get the concussion like impacts because the car is just so durable and so rigid and it doesn't come apart. I was watching the Xfinity race on Saturday and I saw the same same type of wreck where the car backs into the wall and the whole rear end was mashed all the way in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the old style car,
Right.
the Gen 6 car, so to speak. The Xfinity still runs. So, and the driver got out and walked away. Find the car was destroyed, so it was not going to continue. But the driver walked away and went back to his hauler, changed clothes, and flew home. Without having to go to a hospital with concussion-like symptoms. So they'll find happy ground. I believe NASCAR will. I think they're already on it right now, working on developing a little more softer rear end for them, and they'll figure it out. And we got to trust in them up until February 6th or 8th when the bash at the Coliseum goes on. They'll have an answer for that, I believe, or at least a better understanding of what to do. But yeah, okay, let's get into the final 20 laps now. And do we just need to go right to the last two laps, or is there anything? Because I mean, there were cautions, abundance, and restarts, which start the havoc. Those always start the havoc. and then you get into the move. And I got to tell you, you know what scares me the most about that last lap with Chastain?
Is that it worked?
It worked, and it's right out of PlayStation 5.
Right. Yeah.
It's
Oh,
I mean, and he even said he learned that from NASCAR 2005.
right.
That they would just do that in a video game, and so he said my only shot, and giving balls to the wall, if you want to say that. Um, he he said this is my only chance, and the only chance I had to do is to do this. And when the first time I saw it, and they said it because you didn't see his whole run around the track until they got to the start finish line.
Right.
Then they went back and showed it, and it's like they sped this up, and they didn't speed it up. It just
He was going.
he literally said he took his hands off the steering wheel and just hit the accelerator and let the wall drive his car.
In the last half lap, Ross Chastain, last half a lap at a mile or a half a mile track. So the last quarter of a mile of that track, he averaged 70 miles per hour faster than everybody else on the track. That's incredible. And we've talked about Ross Chastain, and he's had his ups and downs this season, obviously. And but how much more of a fairy tale type ending is it for him to go out and be able to pass the guy that he's been into it with, and Denny Hamlin, all season, and make it into the championship and kick him out? And I think that's just incredible. And what he did for his team and himself to get in the championship round. I was on the fence about Ross Chastain, whether I liked him, whether I didn't like him. I think he's done some really stupid shit this year. But at the end of the day, he's gained a piece of my fandom by that move right there. And that's actually who I'm even with Chase Elliott being in the top four. And I know who you're pulling for this weekend, but I think I'm pulling for Ross Chastain at this point.
Well, you and a bunch of other people, because right now, if you look at most betting odds, he's favored to win this thing. The odds I've seen early on, now it'll all change as we get closer to it. But I have no superlatives other than say, like I said, Kahuna's to the wall. Good for him, and he did. But I think that's the mentality that the Trackhouse Racing has created. Young teams coming in, and these guys are learning and living off these simulators, and they're learning and living off these video games, and they're changing the way racing is being done.
Oh,
from
yeah.
the good old days when you used to put 20 extra feet of fuel line in your car so you could hold 2 or 3 extra gallons of gas. Back in the days when Earnhardt and Foyt and Andretti, those guys in Yarborough and all were racing, they just would add tons of fuel line.
Well, that's with all the simulator practice. I mean, that's been proven. We've had truck guys this year, Xfinity guys come out and win races on track that they've never even seen before, but they've spent hours in the simulator with it. So, I can't really speak to how realistic that is for those guys, but obviously it's working. But Steve, one thing that I find the most incredible out of the whole situation that was Martinsville is the driver that won, Christopher Bell, had an incredible postseason and raced himself into the second round twice. And this last time at Martinsville to get into the championship round when he was either you have to win or you're done. There was nothing he could have done during the race except win to make it into the championship round. And he goes out and wins the race, which he's done twice this postseason. And that's a secondary story than the move that we saw by Ross Chastain. I find that pretty incredible and really speaks to how incredible the move by Ross Chastain was.
Yeah, especially coming from a team like Stewart-Haas Racing, JGR. He's not their primary driver,
right?
And he was like I don't want to say a steady Eddie, but he rose to the occasion. And I know that our good friend Ryan, um, was high on him all season long,
Right.
and picked him many times in his pool, our pool that we did. Which, by the way, I think I won by about 120 points.
You did not.
So I did
I
not.
won. No, I
You
won.
Did you win?
Yeah, I won.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. Yeah. Well, who was keeping score?
I did.
Yeah. Okay. But no. So yeah, and that should be the primary story, because for him to do that, to pull out wins out of his rear end twice in the playoffs and come back and have, a much better than average season, obviously, but certainly not the season like a Chase Elliott had or a Logano had or something like that. But to pull out wins twice and put himself in the Final Four, it goes back to making for a very compelling Final Four now.
Oh yeah, it's going to
And
be exciting.
is there anything we need to talk more about Martinsville? I mean,
No, I think we could.
every driver had a compelling story. I mean, Elliott led the season all year long, won the
So
regular season
consistent.
championship, consistent driver, always in the top five. Had not a great playoff system. Fortunately, he had banked enough points
Yeah.
through the regular season that he was able to carry those points, and they carried him in there,
Well,
and then
Steve,
got help from his teammate in the final race. Really, I think giving up the final pit stop was huge for him. You got Logano, who's a gritty fighter, and we always we two of us always had Logano in our pool,
right.
two of the three at least, because you just can't discount Joey Logano. I mean, he knows how to race clean, dirty, if you know what I'm talking about, and he's always got a fast car. Penske or he always puts a not Penske, always puts a fast car together for him, and goes in there, runs hard. Elliott, the consistent driver, and then you got the absolute ace or wild card in Chastain now, who you don't know what watermelon he's going to smash at any point in time. So go ahead.
Yeah.
Let's
No,
get into
I
let's get
was
into
just gonna.
Phoenix.
We will in the championship four, but I was just gonna say when it comes to Chase Elliott, he had such a consistent season that he went into the first round of the playoffs with a huge lead and a huge lead in the owners' points, and he had such an inconsistent, or I'll even say bad playoffs,
Yeah,
that last week he ends up losing the owners' championship with his car to Kyle Larson. So Kyle Larson had a couple bad weeks in the playoffs, but really he was a really consistent driver throughout the playoffs. Just 2 bad weeks and he's done. So,
yeah. And he didn't have the
and
points build up that Elliott did.
right,
Really,
right,
truly, probably a very similar type season in the playoffs, especially. But he just was not able to build up the points that Elliott was able to build up
right,
during the regular season, which kept Elliott alive.
and a lot of
Um,
that was due to how many different winners we had. People were stingy on points this year going into the playoffs. So, the most dominant driver we saw as far as wins going into the playoff was Chase Elliott, and he wasn't even able to maintain those points all the way through the last actual race. We have the championship round, but the last race of the postseason.
well, this is one thing I didn't have my interns research. Um, how many non-playoff eligible drivers did we have win races in the playoffs?
I
I
think
got
there
to
was
believe this
three.
is like a record.
Yeah, there was three. Well, no, there was four because the first three rounds or the first three races were won by drivers not in the playoffs, and then I think the first one of the second round was won by a driver not in the playoffs. So, and then I think the next one was won by Joey Logano, if I remember that right,
Was it
or
Elliott at
or
Talladega?
Elliott, and then
Elliott
Joey Logano,
Talladega.
right. So yeah, and that was the first time. That was the most non-playoff drivers that have won in the playoffs. So really, it's been a great season. So right now, heading into the playoffs, we got Christopher Bell, obviously Joey Logano, Chase Elliott, and Ross Chastain. I think it goes without saying who your pick is, but at least let me hear you say it, Steve.
Well, no, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm going to go with Elliott because I'm a homer, but I'm not sure he's the favorite here. I don't know. I don't think he is going to race hard enough with Chastain now and Bell. And Logano's a hard driver too. And I think of all of the four drivers, Elliott is probably what I would call the softest driver of the four.
Yeah.
Now he's the most consistent. I think he's steady Eddie all the way through, and he'll find his way out of trouble probably more than anybody else will if trouble starts brewing. But on a mile track with these cars, I don't know how much trouble's going to brew really until they get to the very end.
As of right now,
Was that Elliott taking off right there?
I think so. I think so. As of
So
right now,
I don't know. I think that this is going to be Chastain has and Bell both have laid it down. This is helter skelter now, and I don't think the days of like when Elliott won the championship 2 years ago, he started dead ass last because of an inspection failure.
I thought he had
And
to. Okay,
wasn't it an inspection failure?
I thought he had to change his engine last year or
Well,
2 years ago.
okay, maybe
Yeah.
whatever. He started last for whatever reason. He started last and drove his way through and dominated, but it was just steadily driving through the field. I'm telling you, right now, I don't know that that's viable right now with these other three guys if they can keep their butts out of trouble for the first 399 laps. Right? I mean, I think it's a 400 lap race, isn't it?
Yeah, so somewhere close. So here's what I'll say. I think you can't have you have two sets of drivers here, and they can't be more the polar opposite. You have Christopher Bell, who always races clean. He does things the right way, by the book, and he's not going to go out and get into anybody. That's just not the type of driver he is. Chase Elliott, I think, will bump with people if he has to, but for the most part, he tries to run a pretty clean race too. And then you have Chastain and Joey Logano. That it doesn't matter if their mothers are driving in front of them. They're going to bump them to win a race. And here's what I'll say: if Christopher Bell or Chase Elliott, either one, can have a comfortable 4 or 5 spot lead going into the last 5 laps, I think that they will compete for the championship. If Joey Logano or Ross Chastain is in the top 5 coming into the last 5 laps, all hell is going to break loose, because they're not lifting for anybody. They're going to win the championship because that's what kind of drivers they are. And if any of them are leading the race in front of either one of Joey Logano or Ross Chastain with 3 to 5 laps left, they're probably not going to win that race. That's kind of my synopsis of it. What do you think we will see at Phoenix this weekend?
Well, here's a question I got for you, and just to open up a discussion. How these are only 4 guys of 35, 36,
Right.
38 cars in a track. Who's pissed off other guys?
Well, that's a great point.
Who's pissed off? I mean, let's face it, Chastain is not the darling of NASCAR right now.
No, but the only person who's pissed off at him is Hamlin.
Well,
right now.
But you don't know there's not others. Okay, so Chastain has, because there was complaints about the move Chastain made at Martinsville, and there was talk and rhetoric going on Fox's NASCAR Today show I watch daily, and on NASCAR Sirius about they're going to have to outlaw that from happening. It came from some of the more veteran drivers. Although they thought it was a bold, great move, it's like the safety involved in that, whatever reason. So, and Chastain's had his run-ins with drivers. Christopher Bell's kept his nose very clean, and really has probably the fewest enemies of everybody. Logano, through his career, has ruffled just about everybody's feathers at some point in time. And Elliott being, the most popular driver and darling of NASCAR. How many people are sick and tired of hearing about that story?
Right.
And him getting all the cheers every time he comes up. And it's like, yeah, I really don't want to see Elliott get another one right now. So my big issue right now is how much resistance do they get from the other 30-something drivers that are competing, and who gives leeway to one driver and who gives leeway to another driver? Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think right now, as many people that Chastain supposedly pissed off, I know Kyle Larson, which that's something that we didn't get into. Kyle Larson is one of those drivers that came out and said that he didn't like the move, but it's only been 3 or 4 years ago that he tried to do the same thing at Darlington and wasn't successful, either because it was the Gen 6 car or Darlington's banked too much to do that. I don't know, but he wasn't successful. And then for him after the race to say it's not a good look for our sport, that I mean, that I equate that, and he's my favorite driver, and I'll equate that to a lying politician that you have dead to rights that they did something, and then them go up and say, that's I would never condone that type of activity. And it's like you did it. You did the exact same thing, and you're saying it's not a good look for the sport. I don't know if he's just pissed off because he wasn't successful, but when it comes to Ross Chastain, which I think, Joey Logano is always, which I don't know that he's pissed too many people off this year. He did have the one race where he spun, I can't even think off the top of my head to win the race. But he did win a race by bumping into somebody this year. But the Ross Chastain and Joey Logano thing are definitely the most high friction kind of contentious activity that we've had on the track all year. They had the race where they played the cat and mouse game. They're always bumping into each other. And even when Ross Chastain wasn't trying to mess with Joey Logano, it always seemed when Ross Chastain messed up, or Denny Hamlin happened to be there. So, I think if anybody's going to do anything, it'll be Denny Hamlin to Ross Chastain. But I also think that if Denny Hamlin does that with as much support that Ross Chastain has gained this week, it's not going to be real good for his reputation. I don't know. Ryan Peters and I talked about this on another show, and Ryan Peters said, I don't know that Denny Hamlin makes it to his hauler if he does that, and I kind of tend to agree with that. If he goes out and he takes Ross Chastain out of the race when he's in contention to win the race, I don't think that's a good look for Denny Hamlin, and I don't know that his career survives that going forward.
Yeah, and I don't think he will. I think that Denny Hamlin's got a little more class than that. I mean, I think he'd like to do that, but I think he understands what's at stake if he does do something like that, like he said. And, you've got Joe Gibbs there sitting over his shoulder, who's one of the cleanest race car owners there is in NASCAR.
Unless it has to do with his grandson.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But there was word today that he's going to sit down and discipline his grandson.
Yeah, by sending him the last race of the year is what it should be.
Yeah, exactly. He just say, you don't race anymore this year, but that's not going to happen either. No, I don't think. I'm hoping. Well, it's almost like you just wish they would just put those 4 cars on the track and let them race each other, and just have 2 separate races.
Yeah,
I don't, and that's not feasible.
It's not, and it's part of racing that is kind of part of it, that this irrelevant unknown driver can accidentally take you out of of competing for this championship because of a mistake they made. That's just racing.
You're not talking about J.J. Yaley, are you?
No, I'm not talking about J.J. Yaley. J.J. Yaley is one of my favorite drivers.
He's good. I'm a Corey LaJoy fan too.
Yeah,
Because of
Corey
his
LaJoy.
mullet,
Yeah,
his hair.
yeah.
Anybody can grow hair like that's okay.
Anybody racing for Rick Ware.
Okay, so any other things we need to talk about here, Phoenix? How important? Let me ask you this question: how important is qualifications now? Because it's a mile track, it's a short track. Pit stall selection is critical.
I think.
So. Do these 4 cars come off the hauler ready for qualifying, or they come ready for racing?
Yes. I think your strategy has to be, if you're one of those top 4 cars, that you want to be out front all day. You don't want any of the middle of the pack bullshit that's going to happen. You just don't want that.
Well, you want pit stall selection.
Yeah, and you want pit stall selection. So you not only want to come out and run a good qualifying lap. I don't know at Phoenix how important pit stall selection is. Short tracks, it's definitely advantage. Sometimes at the mile and a half, it really doesn't matter. Some of those pit stalls don't
Phoenix
matter.
Is just a mile track, isn't it?
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah, Phoenix is just a mile track. Look it up.
Yeah, I am. I forget.
I believe Phoenix is just a mile track.
You're probably right, Steve. I can't think off the top of my head. Yes, it is. You're right. 1 mile. So I stand corrected at a mile track.
That's a short track.
Why. Yeah, at a mile-long track, pit selection is going to be huge. I think also being out front, trying to stay toward the top of the pack all day is huge. And if they go long, if they go for long, green flag runs and the pack gets mixed up, you can't avoid that as part of racing. So you're going to find yourself in the middle of the pack at some point during the race. But yeah, I definitely think you do everything you can to ensure that you stay out front all day long, and that starts with qualifying.
Yeah, so I believe all 4 of the crew chiefs are setting their cars up for qualifying off the hauler.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's an impound race, or they're gonna have to take that, get that pit stall selection, and then make adjustments to the car as they make pit stops throughout the race. But I think that's critical, right? The very first thing off the hauler is get that pit stall selection. Get the 4 best pit stalls for these 4 cars, and go from there. And then you can race the cars. And so you got 4 quality drivers. So they're going to be. I mean, you got 4 quality crew chiefs. So you're going to be able to dial the cars back in during the course of the race. And remember, nobody has to win the race. It's just of the 4 cars,
you got to finish the best.
Got to finish the best.
Right.
So you can finish 20th if the others are 23rd, 24th, and 25th, and you win the championship. You don't even have to come close to winning the race. You just got to outdo all those other 3 cars.
Yeah.
So
the last race of the season is always exciting, and I think it'll be exciting. So before we end the show, Steve, 100%, who's your pick? Don't homer it. Who do you truly believe is gonna win the championship?
I think my homer pick is Elliott. We know that, but I think Joey Logano is going to pull this thing in.
Okay, I think, and I'm rooting for Chase Elliott because he at least belongs to the team I like, but I think Ross Chastain is that's who I believe is going to win the championship. But we're all sitting here saying it: Ross Chastain, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, because they have to win right. But don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if Christopher Bell is a NASCAR champion at the end of this race.
I think this is the most balanced of 4 drivers we've had. No, it's probably no different than any time. This is a crapshoot from all 4 drivers. they all have unique characteristics that, if this race goes clean, you look at Elliott or Bell. If this race goes helter skelter, you look at Chastain or Logano.
Right.
And Logano can race clean and he can race dirty. He's the most seasoned veteran, 32. I mean, that's the oldest driver racing around. You're talking about a young group. Elliott's the youngest at 26, and Logano's the oldest at 32. These are not old, grizzled veteran drivers running this, and all of them are willing to play to win. And yeah, so you just got to see how the race goes, see how the qualifying goes, see who starts where, who doesn't fail inspection. God, I pray none of the four guys fail inspection. If you do now, shame on your crew chief.
Well, that's even if does NASCAR even come out and say anything if they do.
Well, like I said, they dumped Elliott to the rear of the field 2 years ago.
That's true.
He ended up winning it. So I don't know.
It sure will be an exciting race, Steve, and you and I will be back sometime next week after the race to sum up.
So who's your pick?
My pick is Ross Chastain.
My pick is Chase Elliott.
Yeah, I figured it would be since we did the NFL Pick'em show the other day, and we got to Indianapolis, and you gave every reason why Indianapolis was going to lose the game, and then picked them to win the game.
That's a homer pick. That's a total homer pick in the NFL. And
but anyway,
I'm done doing that because right now I'm so pissed off at the Colts for trading Najee Himes away to Buffalo. Like they needed to make Buffalo stronger and make the Colts a lot weaker. So
they're going after the first. They're going after the first round.
They're going after the quarterback. Yeah, the QB pick. Yeah, for next year. Holy cow,
Steve! Go ahead.
Let's see. We'll do another show next week. Wrap it up, and we'll have discussion on. You know what? We should get like Goodpasser to come on and see what he doesn't know about NASCAR.
That might be a good idea. We're going to have to do that.
Yeah.
So you heard it here first. Mike Goodpasser will be on the NASCAR show next week to give his expert opinion on a sport he knows absolutely nothing about.
Well, he knows nothing. He knows nothing about any sport. He just he's got a fast computer.
He knows. He rattles that stuff off on the top of his head a lot. I know that for a fact.
And on both sides of the fence with you guys, IU basketball starts up next week.
Yep.
And I know that we'll lose a lot of NASCAR fans right now because they don't give a damn about IU basketball. And we also have the IU basketball show sponsored by the Grilling Truth coming on next week as well. So I look forward to talking with you and Ryan about it. And then we'll have you on, Joe, or come on and talk with us.
I think
your predictions.
Yeah, I think I've already been fired from the NFL Pick'em show, but yeah, next week.
No. You're welcome next week.
Next week we have the here on the Grilling Truth. Next Wednesday, I believe it'll be, or Thursday. Sometime mid next week, we'll have the NFL Pick'em show. I think you'll probably have the NFL Draft show. The IU basketball
draft.
Yeah, the IU basketball show with Mike Goodpasser and Steve Risley is taking off, and then as always, you will get Ryan Peters and I radio show here at Froggy 95.9 that plays out at the Grilling Truth, which is up next here on the Grilling Truth.
Now, Ryan, if I come on your radio show, I can't swear, can I?
No.
God damn it.
In the all-inspiring words of Eminem, the FCC won't let you be.
FCC won't let you be.
Yeah. So, but we have a fun-packed week on the Grilling Truth, and Steve, as always, this show has been fun. And before we leave you, I want to let everybody again know that the Grilling Truth is powered by Betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for finding an online casino or sportsbook that's right for you. Steve, I will see you soon.
Go 9 car.